Okay, we are back with more of our budget proceedings, and we now have the Convention Center, Utah Valley Convention Center. Danny, take it away.
Okay, so Danny Wheeler, General Manager, Utah Valley Convention Center. Really, we're looking at 3 budget line items, as we've done every year. We have an operating budget, a capital expenditure budget, and then per our management agreement with Utah County, the incentive fee paid to our corporate office is a separate line item as well. So we'll go over in detail the operating and the capital, and on the very last page, it sums those 3 together for that total kind of amount.
So just when you prepared these, you haven't used the latest and updated numbers.
What latest updated numbers?
So for
What are you referring to?
2018, you're still showing a total subsidy for 735,643, but that's way overstated on our
Yeah, so
financials.
what you're seeing here is you're seeing
The budgeted.
2019's budget compared to 2018's
Okay,
budget.
I was gonna say, cause you've
Yeah.
projected wise, you're gonna beat that big time.
Yeah, we will. So do you have a preference on starting with the operating budget or the capital expenditure budget?
I don't care where you start.
Okay, maybe
Start.
let's start with the capital one, which is on the big 11x17. We won't spend a lot of time. This was something that Richard and I reviewed on Monday, project by project, line item by line item. But we can go through that real quick.
Yeah, I
and
got
see if
one
you
for
have any
you right off
questions.
the bat on that line. Why AutoCAD? Cause that's on Richard's budget.
What do you mean?
Why
that's
do
on
you
Richard?
use AutoCAD? What do you use it for?
We use CAD for all of our event layouts, diagrams.
So this is your own CAD, not in Public Works.
yes,
Perfect.
yes. So we actually use. I have an AutoCAD license on my computer,
Okay.
and then all of our events.
Good enough.
team
I
and
just
stuff.
wanted to make sure. I wanted to know if it was just part of their system since
Yeah.
we have that relationship.
Yeah, one difference that we do have between the two that Richard and I talked about, a subscription license on CAD can run about $1,500 a year. You're updating version whenever they do and all that. We're running on 2012. It hasn't impeded our ability to do what we need to do. So our intention would be to purchase the software outright without the subscription, because it's significant financial savings over, it's lasted us 7 years by the time we get the new one over the subscription based.
Okay. New staging, obviously.
Yeah, so just going back up to food and beverage, one item I did want to address, kitchen equipment. We have a steamer that the boiler that powers that has been deemed unsafe by Utah County Public Works, has some rusting. So we need to surplus that piece of equipment. It has with it a kettle, which is dependent on the boiler that operates the steamer. So basically the kettle's not any good without the steamer. I've reached out to the jail kitchen operations to ask them if they would have any use for it, because it's just fine. They don't, but at this point we wouldn't either. So what we're proposing would be to replace that piece of equipment with an additional gas double oven. We do have 3 double ovens already, but there are times where we're having to cook in batches when when we have groups of 500, 600 people, that having that additional 4th double oven would help us significantly. So that's what that $9,000 that you see there would be. Going down to the audio visual, our biggest thing for this coming year with technology changing. When we first opened 6.5, 7 years ago, everything was still 4:3 format as far as projection screens. Everything's going to widescreen.
16:9 now, yeah.
Yeah, those screens aren't cheap. What this includes would be kits to retrofit our existing screens to get frames that will go to the 16:9 format. So it's not purchasing brand new screens, but it's using what we have and for a lesser price being able to retrofit
So
those.
it's not just the projector. You have to rewire too. You have to get the appropriate wires for these new projectors.
Yeah, so we actually purchased the projectors, the upgraded projectors this year. That was a capital project for this year. So we have the equipment. It's the actual projection screen. So right now, if you know, they do a video or a presentation in widescreen format, you're going to have blank black bars on the top and bottom of our screens, which, you know, for someone who's paying tens of thousands of dollars to rent and hold their event, it's just not the look and professionalism that we want to be able to offer.
I don't see a problem with that. When I was young, married, we had our, you know how sometimes on the television it starts getting black as it gets older and it comes down. And I remember watching a basketball game with my wife, and we couldn't actually see if they made it or not. We didn't have any money.
I
right?
thought you were going to say when you rode in on your Shetland pony, you turned on the radio and then clicked the film
That too.
strip.
We had the Shetland pony, you know. But we had to wait for the crowd to cheer, not to know if they made the basket or not. I remember those days.
Moving down to the staging line item. So what we have currently, or we have 6x8 rolling risers.
Right.
This would actually be performance staging. We've talked about, you know, over the last several years, we have from January through April, just about every weekend, we have a dance convention. Economic Impact has the hotel rooms. They either are using our risers, which are more wobbly and, you know, not built for performances like that, or we're having to rent from Modern at the tune of about $6,000 any event. At that point, we charge the dance convention that price and nothing more, because that's way more than what it should be. So both from a quality, but also from an ROI
How long does it
standpoint.
last?
What's that?
What's the use out of it, lengthwise?
Life of
Yes.
equipment? Oh, this would last us 20, 25 years.
Okay.
I mean, it's really durable equipment. So it's the same manufacturer that we've spec'd out, that we have our risers currently. Moving down, housekeeping equipment. We've split this up into two line items. It's, you know, again, 7 years into it. Some of our scrubbers and wide area vacs and that sort of equipment has reached its end of useful life. So we've kind of divvied those up into 2019 and 2020 based on the immediate need of that particular piece of equipment. So what we're looking at with that $20,000 would be bathroom scrubbers, 3 new wide area vacs, and a sweeper. The central system, $10,000. This is just an earmarked item, really, for all intents and purposes. It's nothing that we have any intention of spending. A few years back, we added this into the budget when we had a $9,500 compressor on our chiller go out, and we didn't have any funds
Right.
budgeted to do that. So we've just set this aside every year in there. We haven't touched it here in 2018, so our hope would be not to touch it, but that's why it's in there, and just in case we need that. Moving down to the $50,000 in the roof membrane. In our agreement with Utah County Public Works, they do all the PM work on our HVAC system. Part of that is we have 8 air handlers up on our roof with a slick PVC membrane that currently we don't have any tread or stairs and platform to get into that. A few years back, we installed a ladder with a strap system, so that's currently what's being taken care of. We did have an employee in the first year we were open before we had the ladder and strap system. A county employee take a fall, had some missed time. What we would love to do is have a permanent stairs and a platform to get into these air handlers. The public works guys are in these air handlers once a week. There's a weekly work order, and during the winter and even during the fall, you get early morning dew. It's a real hazard. So this $50,000, we have started the conversations with some of the companies that could manufacture some of these a platform like this, but unfortunately, this is a 50,000 is a very rough estimate at this point.
Walked across lots of those. I'll tell you what I used to do. I'd carry a screwdriver, so if I slipped, I could stab it in and hold.
He shoot his Shetland pony. Let's not kid ourselves.
It always goes back to the Shetland pony. Now that I started it.
So those are really the numbers that I wanted to just touch on. Are there any other on that?
Yeah, why do you
budget?
have to refinish air walls?
So-
Air, why do you have to refinish about air? Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Dented.
That's right.
All right, no
Just
other
use a
questions
pump.
on capital then? I guess before we move on, I do want to point out one thing. If you look in, so this is a 5-year rolling capital. Obviously, the 2020 and beyond is fluid. Hopefully, as we're estimating that end of life on certain equipment, if we can extend that and push that back, certainly. But if you look at 2021,
All the
that
lighting and all the
number,
carpet.
that number jumps significantly. The carpet, so that's when we'd anticipate replacing the carpet. And we've talked about retrofitting the lighting, particularly the pre-function lighting, and going from CFLs to LEDs. One of the first things I said to Lisa when I walked in is love the new lighting in here. I think it makes a big difference.
Yep.
We were looking at doing the lighting earlier than that 2021, but with the carpet, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to plan that in advance. We're gonna have to shut down a 2-week window during our slow time in the summer, not book any events in order to make that happen. So the idea was, while we're doing that, if we're gonna, obviously we're gonna have a loss of revenue for those 2 weeks. So to minimize impact, my idea would be to do the carpet and that pre-function
Deneen.
lighting in that same
What Danny's talking
window.
about is because the county owns that building, obviously. Is that something we could earmark out of capital expenses for 2021 or a sign, I should say?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing in the past, is
Okay.
assign it to get existing fund balance to cover these capital projects, so
Okay.
that when they come up, that it's already set aside, so.
Okay, so you would already assign about $500,000 or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Okay, good.
We went through that,
We already-
last year, I think.
Yeah, we did. Anyway, so I just wanted to point that out on 2021, so.
Awesome.
All right, with that, we'll move over to our operating budget. On the packet that you have stapled that has the operating budget, on the back of that, I've done some
Mine's
graphs.
paper clipped, but that's
Paper
okay.
clip, sorry.
On the very back?
It's the graphs, the colored
Oh,
graphs
the
that are,
graph,
that are a few pages in. Really, I just kind of
Oh,
wanted
It's
to
only red and green, Commissioner Lee.
Christmas time.
That'll help you a lot.
kind of give you an update
those.
on, on the revenue side, how is business? What is economic impact, looking like? Kind of tell the story through some of these graphs. So this first one, what this shows is as of October 1st of the prior year, how much contracted business we have on the books. So you can see this last number there, 2018, that we have significantly more, probably $300,000 more contracted already for 2019 than we've ever had as of October 1st of any year prior.
Actually, it's approaching $500,000 more than last year.
Well, than last year. What I'm saying is, yeah, it's hundreds of thousands more than any other year. So all signs are pointing to next year being a very strong year. We felt some effects of the parking situation this year. Some of those pieces of business that we lost as soon as we had that agreement in place on the Freedom lot, and we've been able to successfully park our events, even our largest of events, using that complete lot. We've been able to win some of those back. Clyde Companies is one of those. They'll be back, and so we're seeing that start to come back, which is obviously very positive. And then the other factor as we get into this is you'll see that in each of our odd years, our revenue has always been higher, and that is due to the cyclical nature of some of these conventions. We had a couple of events that we have every other year in the odd years. So that's just kind of the way it works.
So you're trying to find those even odd years.
Yeah, yeah, and I will share a success story here in a minute on that. Just based on your previous discussion, just so you know, UAC is most likely going to be holding their April convention with us. So that's about a $40,000 to
Okay, the
$50,000
dues aren't due until June.
revenue towards us. That doesn't include the economic impact on the community, but
We'll
certainly,
actually get some decent food, maybe.
but certainly since we've been open, I can't remember if this will be the third or the fourth time that we've hosted that, but certainly.
Have you signed a contract with them?
No, not yet.
After you do, will you send them an increase for 28%?
So moving on, so that shows where we're at right now.
Good job.
Well handled.
Moving on to the second graph. This is what we book in the year for the year. So we're booking it in January through December of that same year. And really what I wanted to show here is compared to that first graph, this is a lot more even. We know year in and year out, there's a much smaller range. We're always going to book business in the year for the year. And those are the smaller, more local events, the ones that don't have booking priority. They aren't the conventions. And I think that's pretty steady. You can see a little bit of variation. But my point being that what we go into a year with is a real strong indicator of what we're going to end the year, because we know that in the year for the year, it's going to be pretty consistent. So on this third page, this just shows you our history of gross revenue by year, which is going to tie back to where when we get to the budget. But there you can see 13, 15, 17 were our strongest years from a gross revenue standpoint. 18 number is an estimated number, so it's everything through end of August where we have financials already done, and then September through December estimated. So the very last page shows you that as of October 1st bar, up against where we ended up that year gross revenue wise. So you can see a very strong correlation between the years where we've been higher, October 1st, or we could even call it January 1st, but it's all relative. So I point that out to say that we certainly anticipate and we're seeing a trend of we're getting bookings farther out, which is always our goal. In addition to the parking, the opening of the Hyatt Place, we're already seeing the benefits of that. And I'll tell you that we're seeing 2020 and 2021, we're seeing 2 and 3 years out more than we have in our history. So that's a very positive sign. So moving to the operating budget, the front page is an income statement. So starting there at the top, number of events, we're actually saying we're going to have fewer events than what we budgeted this year. But if you look down the sheet, we're saying those fewer events are going to bring in more people and going to bring in more revenue. So a lot of people, when it's mentioned that I work at the convention center, one of their first questions is, how many events do you do a year? I would argue that number of events isn't a great measuring stick, because my goal of holding fewer events that are larger in nature and having more economic impact is even better than hosting 300 events that
I was
are
going to
smaller
say,
in
because
nature.
one event could constitute 10 people coming and using a room, and so it's like,
Yeah, versus, the St. Con that we had just this last week was a 1,200 person convention, Sunday through Friday, that accounts for one event, the same as that 10 person meeting. So going down the sheet, you can see that we're anticipating rental revenue, service revenue, food and beverage revenue, audio-visual decorating, across the board, everything increasing. So when we
did you raise
submitted,
Joel's rent? Just kidding, he just walked in.
so you can see based on what we came last year with our 2018 budget of $2.8 million in gross revenue, we're saying we're going to be right at about 3.1, so about $250,000. If you remember, that's about the same number that we felt we were impacted by the parking. And then going down on the expense side of things, on the indirect expense side of things, an increase of $82,000, which is about 3.3%. We try to capture any sort of event expense into your event expense category, but there's certain things that we just can't do that for. For instance, our utilities. we know that the busier we are, the higher our gas bill, our electric bill, but we don't have a way of really allocating that back to an event. You know, same things on things like linen rental, to try to allocate every single linen back to a particular event. So we leave that as an indirect expense. And so the expectation would be, as our gross revenue goes up, you're certainly going to have those expenses go up as well. So at the bottom line there, our budget for 2019 would be a $272,000 subsidy, which is about a $70,000 bottom line improvement over what we submitted last year. Any questions on that front sheet? And then pages 2 and 3 is getting that information broken up into a little bit more detail. So for
I just need
instance,
my magnifying glass.
I
Hold
know,
on.
and when you get it digitally, you'll obviously be able
No, I
to
know.
read it better.
Ironically, with you, I'm getting used to seeing these.
So on that cover page, we kind of break up our indirect expenses by department. On this second page, which is your income statement detail, you're going to see line items, for instance, building supplies or you know, repairs and maintenance across all departments. And so it's kind of breaking it up and giving you all that information in a different manner.
So, Danny, just looking at, obviously, because I know how you break these out, obviously, we know July's our least busy month.
Mhm.
So, where you made a comment earlier about you're seeing a lot more bookings 2 to 3 years out, the ones we've booked in July have been really good. But the question is shouldn't you identify that date, that range now, so that we don't run into issues? Because it's a lot easier to have a group move a week 2 years in advance than it is, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And in fact, you know, you mentioned July. We're anticipating gross revenue in July of $202,000.
Right.
We've never been anywhere close to that. There's a few groups that we've worked with Joel and his group on that we actually have a pretty good July when it comes to convention business for this July. And part of that is, now that we know our history, we know our market, we can be more aggressive in July. Not only us, but the hotels, because, you know, we know that.
Which is why I go back to my point. It's more important to pick, because again, we have to maintain a building.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, but the sooner we identify that, the better,
Mhm.
so that everybody involved can plan. Because like you say, it's not just you.
Right, right. In fact, Joel and I just had a conversation this week on a group that's looking at 2021. It's a great piece of business, but per hour booking windows, it doesn't quite qualify to book in 2021, meaning there's still a possibility between now and, what were they out, like 9 months? I think they have about 9 months based on our booking window before that 2021 group can sign, because they have like 190 hotel rooms on peak and 600 total. Again, good piece of business, really good piece of business. But we're not going to book that 3 years out, because we could get a great piece of business over that time. And so that's why we have those booking windows. So you're absolutely right, Commissioner. I mean, that's our first question when we get a group like that. What's your flexibility? You know, if we do have a group come up, can you move a month ahead, a month behind, a week ahead, a week behind? Can you change from a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? I mean, we're asking all of those questions, because obviously our goal 100% is to do whatever we can to place everyone.
Sure.
And then third page would be a breakdown of the events. And so we break that up into our 6 event types, which are conventions, trade shows, consumer shows, special events, meetings, and banquets. So you can kind of see in the different event segments how that revenue is split. And then, as I mentioned, the very last page brings all 3 together. It would give you the operating budget, the capital expenditure budget, and that incentive fee. Any questions on operating budget?
I've got one question for you. Looking at salaries across the spectrum, looks like salaries are pretty consistent all the way across. So you hadn't had any turnover or any Any anomalies there?
Um,
Just- 'cause it
we
says-
certainly have. We don't budget to, have someone leave and replace
Right,
that.
right, right.
So we do. We take our salaries. We used to do it based on number of days in a month where they would vary. But we've gone back to just taking that total line and dividing it by the 12 months. Was that?
Yeah, because that's what I see. I see 100,275
So in-
all
in-
the way across.
Yeah.
But when I look down at part-time wages, it goes up and down and up and
Yeah.
down. And same with temporary. You have
Yep.
some here and you have some there.
So we know that salaries, whether we have 2 events in a month or 20 events in a month, we have to pay those salaries. If we have 2 events in a month, we're not going to be staffing part-timers. If we have 20 events or we have major events, obviously that part-time wages for that month will go up. And so,
Accordions are the full-time.
yeah. So these part-time wages are tied directly to where we have revenue spread across the 12 months. One last thing I forgot to mention, and I just briefly spoke with Richard about this. It's something that came up since he and I met on Monday. Met with Peg Development yesterday. They had a parking kiosk that they were demoing for their phase 1 parking structure and invited us to come over and look at it. In that conversation with Peg, they mentioned that they're working with Provo City on amending a city ordinance that would allow them to put a digital board, a marquee of sorts, out with that development. Currently, I think he said it was 550 West. You couldn't do it any farther south on Freedom than 550 West. So they're working to amend that city ordinance that would allow them to do this. And the cost
Hold on, that doesn't make sense. There's no such thing as a 550 West. on
Sorry,
Freedom.
550 North.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
I was
sorry.
like,
550 North. So
I was crossing
basically,
State Street now.
rec center between Center Street, it doesn't allow for it. And so
For
they're
direction, wayfinding, is that what what's it for?
digital signage. So like a marquee.
Oh, okay.
So he came back and said that the cost they've gotten on that is $124,000 and had a conversation with me about
approaching us for tax incremental financing.
No. About investing in that with the idea that, if we put up $25,000 out of a capital expenditure from the convention center, we would then own 20% of that content at all times. And so we could advertise our events and
So we can
use
own
it.
a sign, but we can't own the spots?
Well, I think we are intending to own some of those spots too. So I think it's worth a discussion, and certainly would be a huge advantage to us in advertising and marketing our
So
events.
here's my question. You have a digital board. Why don't we upgrade it?
What do you mean I have a digital board?
You used to have a digital board.
I don't have an exterior digital board.
You used to, I thought, right there in the corner. Oh, you have a space for one right there on the corner, though.
Yeah,
So why don't we get, if it's that important,
and I don't know the exact numbers. I know when the convention center was being built, they spec'd out putting a marquee, even though according to city ordinance, they wouldn't have been allowed to. They were gonna go down that road after the fact.
So-
They spec'd that out.
the reason I
and-
say
and-
that is because in your case, to me, it's very different. Buying a marquee for a convention center better show me how I'm going to increase my business, right?
Mhm.
And so that's why I say if it's really that important and you can prove business, then let's
Yeah.
put one.
So the number that the architect came back with when we were building the convention center was over $1 million. Now, I don't know the details of what they spec'd out, but that would have been on the corner of Center Street and Freedom Boulevard there. And the county decided, hey, that's not worth $1 million. And I would certainly agree with that. And so the idea of a shared billboard in the downtown area in proximity of the convention center, I really like, because I agree with you. The ROI of advertising and owning that 100% just isn't there. But what we'd be able to, help in advertising and generating more events and more business, I think is a number hard to measure. But B, we do have events that are looking to advertise locally, that if we had control of that, we would be able to sell
Was
that
the
space
digital
to them.
signing proposed on his parking structure land or the office land?
It would be, well, it would be on the parking, because the
Okay, so
parking are the two
Is
that
it
would be on
included in
Freedom
the
Boulevard.
underlying ownership that Provo City's trying to get?
That I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's a little more convoluted than, hey, should we buy a sign? Because of the parking issue still.
Yeah, I mean, their intention is for it to be on Freedom Boulevard, and as we know, their intention on both Phase 1 and Phase 2 is have the parking structure on Freedom with the office space over on 100, on the
Right.
100 west side. So, but we didn't get into that yesterday. So again, it's not included on this capital budget for this year, but just an item that, to consider having a discussion about.
Okay.
Any other questions I can answer?
Nope.
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I thought John and Kelly would come for you.
John had Marriott corporate auditors show up this morning at his door. Happens to the best. Yeah,
always
that's not fun. And then Kelly is at a leadership conference up in Salt Lake. So we apologize that it's the two staff people, but
Oh, I just thought they would come support you.
no,
We know we've got the capable people here.
that's well, we're the people that pull it together, and they've seen this, and
Thank you.
we've kept it.
At least Deneen for sure.
We've kept it fairly simple, the way we did last year. We're prepared to answer questions more granular if you want to get in there, but I do apologize for John and Kelly that they couldn't be here. Also that Lee couldn't be here. Lee is back in Kentucky attending teams, and he'd be able to talk a little bit more on the sales end, but I think I have a pretty good idea of what we're doing there, and I can talk through it. The first sheet that you have there, basically it's a little misleading because you'll notice there's 4 blanks underneath our contract funding. And that this year, when we received the $50,000 for the research, the $450,000 for the additional marketing, it all went into our marketing and our budget, our budget. We brought it into the budget. Those questions are yet to be answered. So they're blank under there right now. So we have basically worked up a budget to the $1,608,178, which is the 2% that we were informed, the average, 2% of the first 3. And then down below are basically just some smaller revenue lines, like we get some investment income off of our reserve and the money that we have as a backup. We think that needs to be adjusted a little bit, but we didn't do it yet. That'll be being done in the next few weeks before we turn this in the end of October. The partnership income is going up. Our partners are putting more skin in the game. When we do some different promotions, we're trying to get them to kick in dollars, especially on the meeting side. We get the co-op money from the state for the meetings. In fact, this reflects the meetings campaign, the Sundance campaign, so that we can get them the highest visibility that Ski Utah does. It's not large, it's like $11,000, but we match and they put some money into that. And then we have 3 signature events, sporting events, not the Utah Valley Marathon. Hiram was a little disappointed, but they're kind of established and going, so we're trying to invest in these new events that make more sense for us to partner with for the first 2 or 3 years and see how they can do. So as you look down there, the 64,406, that's partner income. That has those 3 campaigns, the partners' revenue that come into it. And then the co-op funding, that's $87,000 that we have to match with that partner revenue.
Why is it down? What is it just Utah Valley Marathon or?
It was down in 18 because that reflected some of the Visit Provo campaign that we didn't do. It went down again this year, and there's potential for more. If we get the $500,000, there's potential for some match that we could possibly.
I thought the $500,000, and this will help me clarify. I thought the $500,000 was the contractual group with the marketing part.
No, it is, but we can stretch that money potentially with some other partner income and that could help even go further out.
Still within the confines of what they
The
do.
$500,000 is unrestricted, which is great because we can use it in counties surrounding us. We can use it regionally. We can do whatever we want with it.
Okay.
But we asked EKR to come back and give us kind of a plan B if we want to beef it up in Mesa, Arizona, or Tucson, which now has an Allegiant flight. In fact, I was talking to the CEO, my counterpart down there, and he said, hey, if you guys want to partner, we know people want to get up to Utah. We've got that direct flight. And so there's that potential, and that would all qualify
Have you flown
for
Allegiant? I'd be careful with the word direct. I'm just kidding.
slow but direct.
Yes, okay.
You don't know when you're going to get off the ground. It's problematic to say the best, but we do have that new flight to Tucson. And so, again, we're trying to be creative that way and look at it.
Sure.
The things that could qualify to have somebody else help us with them, i.e. the state, that's a potential. But the 500,000 that we have asked for, it's designed for
Well,
this.
and like I say, I mean, 31,000 is a significant hit, and that's why I was wondering what campaigns or what dropped off.
Well, this does not reflect the leisure campaign.
Okay.
Okay, the leisure campaign, because we don't know if we'll
Good.
have a match for it, because that has yet, we're hoping in the next month, because if we can get that on the agenda and get that approved, we know the TAP has given their recommendation, so it's in the commission's lap. If we can get that approved, the 2019 budget that we will turn into the end of the month will reflect all of that.
Can I correct that just a hair? They actually haven't given their recommendation fully yet to us. They are doing that within a month, right?
Boy, I wish Mr. Garfield was here,
Yeah,
so I could say,
He called a special meeting in November
Okay.
to make sure they discuss those things.
Okay. Again, the goal being, the sooner the better. We don't wait and
Right.
get into the next year.
I just didn't want you to think
Think that it's
wait
completely
for-
in
yes.
your laps.
we have to wait for that recommendation. part.
Okay. A few things that are not reflected on this simple budget, but we've, Justin, and I'm not sure if you saw Justin at the Evermore event that I saw you at on Saturday night, Commissioner, but Justin was our sales manager.
Oh, I saw Justin.
He was like,
The tall guy?
Yeah, he's like 38, had his full family on the benefits, and had been in sales a little bit longer. We replaced him with a guy that's individual, younger. There was about a $7,000 or $8,000 savings right there on what we were spending for Justin that we're not going to spend for this next guy. We budgeted 4.5% on salaries and wages. We can go up that high. We average about 2.5% to 3%. That's where we keep it. This year, nobody got over that, over a 3%. According to the guidelines my executive committee has given us for exceptional, we can go up to 5%. So we budget 4.5, knowing we can go up, but we rarely go there. But that's where we are. Benefit costs, we put them in at 10% increase. I know last year we put it in at 15%, and we actually came in more around 11. So there was that we won't know that for a couple of months. Dental costs have all gone down.
They quit paying for anything.
Well,
I mean,
believe me, we get the phone call if they do. But the dental costs went from like a family at $119 to like $85 a month. And so, and Heather, who was working with them, they wanted to get us on a calendar year. It used to be August, so they're extending that rate through the end of next year. So knock on wood, for the first time, benefit costs are looking fairly, I don't know, sustainable is the right word, but not as bad as they have been in the past. So
flat
we're
in their increase.
yeah, fairly flat in the increase. Some increases. In fact, we won't even know for sure if it's the 10% for a couple more months. We are doing filling out all of the surveys that the individuals do so they can compare other options and we have all that on hand. So we are looking at that and running that by our executive committee, who really does all things benefits, salaries, wages. They're the ones that give us the direction there. The sales has been interesting this year. I know Danny talked about these groups that are booking more 2-3 years out. We're seeing that big time. And it's interesting because Visit Salt Lake, I was talking to Scott Beck, and he'll have sales managers that will be working on these groups, and they'll go 9 months, 18 months with nothing, and then they hit like that because they just require more effort. We started out a little bit slow. We're about 50% of goal, but we've probably got 15 really good pieces of business in the pipeline right now that we hope we hope some of them will close this year. The executive committee tightened down even on my incentive program, and if we don't hit a certain level, it will be a big hit. So we're motivated. We're motivated to get those groups in. You know, that one that Danny referred to that was like 200 and something on peak, or about 200 and about, I think it's more like 800 rooms. it's killing my sales managers that they can't go definite with those groups, that we can't get everybody to fold so they can go definite, but we're like, no, that's why we set these guidelines. We have it that, you know, within a certain period, it has to be big. When, when the calendar shrinks, it could be a smaller group and we'll go for it, but.
But I think there's an underlying conversation to be had there, because as the market changes, so we know that when times aren't as good, that it shrinks, and right, and booking windows, they're not out.
They're shorter.
They're
exactly.
shorter.
Exactly.
So it might be something that the commission and you guys and Danny may want to talk about and address. And again, he has a lot more experience, as you do, than I do in these things. But as the economy changes and we get into these things where everybody is booking a 2 to 3 year window, we probably ought to reevaluate a little bit on that. But I'm sure there's numbers to it and stuff like that. But to me, it makes sense why.
Yep.
You know, because you don't want to lose it, but at the same time, you know.
Well, and we're trying to get more aggressive. We've for the last 3 years, we've done a DC event in the fall where
Right.
we go back and meet with meeting planners. Well, Tracy's starting to get enough meeting planners in Atlanta. We've got Dallas. We've got other areas. So Lee's being a little bit more flexible with those guys this year, saying, this is your budget. If you want to attend these 3 shows, you can. If you want to do 2 shows and a client event in Atlanta, you can do that. This is the budget. You got to work around that. And we're looking at those because, again, there's multiple ways you influence people to book business. And when Connect was out here in Salt Lake in August, and we were able to get those 15 planners down here and have them up at Sundance and have these planners advocating for us up in Salt Lake at Connect. I mean, we're sitting at our appointments and a planner will come by and say, I don't care what your piece of business is, book it in Utah. You'll love it down there. And I mean, these people are just really, we know that that's the best thing we can do is get them here. But sometimes you have to get face to face with them. I mean, it's a process. So we're being really aggressive trying to put as much money as we can towards Lee and his budget to get that done, because we know that's a priority. We know that with the new geographic areas where Tracy has everything east of the Mississippi, Jeremy has everything west of the Mississippi to the west coast, with the exception of Utah and the surrounding states. And that's what Aaron is working. And Aaron's doing really, really well. In fact, last week we did a Salt Lake fam with some of these planners that do events throughout Utah. They're based in Salt Lake, but they haven't been down to Provo in years. They're that demographic that gets on the freeway of I-15 and they go through Utah County to get somewhere else, but they don't get off. And that kind of leads me to the whole Explore Utah Valley. We've found that we're getting really good traction on that people are getting why we're asking them to explore, whether it's an Evermore, whether it's a butterfly biosphere that's going in, whether it's a zip line up at Sundance that people haven't experienced. It's ringing, it's resonating, which is great. And plus there's less confusion with the Utah Valley Convention Center and Utah Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau and all that stuff. So
I would just hope that we would kind of settle in from a marketing and branding standpoint. I agree. I love
you don't want to change it.
I
Yeah.
love the Explore Utah Valley. I think it was I love it. I really do. Let's let it saturate, because there's that thing, and keep building on the great stuff you guys are doing. I do commend you for it.
And again, the influencers that come out, it's resonating with their folks. And I agree. Again, I'm hoping that where we were, adventure awaits to bring everyone together, that we've kind of found this medium in the middle that can work for both markets.
Having watched you guys from the beginning 4 years ago, where you've come to, I'm so happy where you've settled, because it's been a rough process to get there. At
it always is, because
But I think, wow, I like where it's going, and I'm with you. I'm really excited.
And honestly, even through the rougher spots, we look at that as an opportunity to try to to listen and to figure out what we need to do. I mean, again, I understand who our partnership is with. I understand that this commission is the one that can collect the taxes and you can distribute them, and we have to be receptive to that, and we want to be. So again, that's basically the budget for the 1.608.
How come these new LEDs keep flickering?
We're gonna have seizures in a minute.
I might.
We're gonna talk about lights next.
Okay. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about lights. So it is on the page 2. Okay. Last year we heard you loud and clear that it's like live within your 2% budget. That's what we've tried to do again this year. We've got 2 items on this page 2 that we would like to beef up if we can, and one of them is sponsorships. I know we talk about that, but and we've got a vetting process, which is very thorough. If the group doesn't come in, they don't get the money. If they don't consume the rooms, they don't get the money. It's all based on past performance or post-performance measurement. But we're asking for $30,000 sponsorship that we can beef it up. We do have, I think it's $20,000 in this budget already. So we've got some money that we're saying we're gonna put it in there. If we can get 30,000 more, it'll make it much more
So-
aggressive.
Since this gets filmed and people can see,
Okay.
I have actually sat in on a few of your board meetings over the years where this has been done. And I will say, whether or not this amounts the right amount, I'm not saying that. But the process you guys do go through with, well, not you, your board, because
The board.
you pitch the idea and then sit back and watch them. They do debate this really heavily and scrutinize it. So
Thank
I do
you.
feel confident in that aspect. Whether the number, again, that's
we-
all debatable to me.
And again, for people that may not be familiar, Lee and me will vet it internally. We'll challenge the sales manager. Where are we at along the process? Why are we doing a sponsorship? Sponsorship is usually the very last arrow in the quiver that we pull out to shoot at someone.
Sure.
We have a number of groups, like those 15 or 20 groups that are in the pipeline right now. I think we've got sponsorship requests for 4 or 5 of them.
Sure.
So the majority of our groups don't get sponsorship. It doesn't even come up. But the reality is larger groups, they ask for it, especially sports groups. I mean, you're aware of that
Yeah,
thing.
oh, yeah.
So then we take
Yep,
it to.
I ask for it,
We take it to the marketing and sales committee who re-pokes holes in it and asks questions. And then if they're good with it, then it's forwarded onto the entire board, and the board gets a chance to poke holes in it
And
and
they
ask
do.
questions. And they do. It's healthy debate in our board meetings. So again, that's a line there that we'd love
And
you
they
to.
have denied some over the.
I can attest to that. And the other thing is, if we get the sponsorship dollars and it's on the books, then we put it in a reserved account. If that group somehow falls through or they don't qualify for the whole amount, it comes back in. And we have to go through the process again for those dollars there. I'm only approved to do up to like a $500 sponsorship. So when we have, say, a community event, Tour of Utah, down in Payson, which bless them for what they're going through and everything. They came and wanted a sponsorship from us. It was a room night generator, but we were getting the rooms with or without a sponsorship because they put them at the Provo Marriott. We wanted to step up to the plate and say, hey, we want to be a player. So I authorized a $500 sponsorship to help with some small community stuff that they were doing. We put about $2,000, so I can do maybe 3 or 4 of those a year. But that's an example of one that we've done on that. So sponsorship is just one of the many tools. It's not an automatic we don't do it. I'm proud to say that we reached out to Provo City last year for one this year and got them to kick in $7,500. And, it was Commissioner Lee and me had some conversation on that, and it was intended that the group was going to be here. And we'll look to do more of those if we can.
So you should hit them up for up to about 50 grand because we give them 50 grand for the peaks that they.
Charlene, duly noted. Anyway, but we'll have those conversations. I like to say we are the Switzerland of the county. We're not trying to get sideways with anyone. We want to make sure they know that we're fighting for them. We're fighting for the economic impact. But we also know who our number one partner is, and that's Utah County, because we operate under the agreement with Utah County. Second question. Any other questions on sponsorship? Anything?
No, it's
Okay.
the second one that I need
Okay.
some help understanding.
Second one, we are 7 years in our space, or in May we'll be 7 years. And our lighting is really low and quite poor in the visitor center. People go by and they're like, oh, we didn't know you were open. It's so dark. So we've had Danny and his staff get us some pricing and bids on
That was my question.
replacing the lighting in there so that it'll be very well lit up. We took down our old logo and we have, so that there, visitor center lighting was $5,700 was the bid we got from Danny
That's
on that.
external or internal?
It's internal. It's replacing the cans, and it's also replacing.
I asked just because you and I had a discussion about outside the
Right,
exterior.
right.
That's
And that also includes, I think, 6 cans in the boardroom, because our boardroom has the same situation. 4 in the boardroom. Okay. Then we have, we want to, we're going to paint the wall this year to try to brighten it up in there, but we want to put our logo on the wall, and it does include some money for indoor sign. That's to have
That's
graffiti
what you
come
mean
out.
by indoor
That's what we mean
sign.
by indoor sign.
Okay.
Okay. But we also have $6,000 on there on a monitor. This is a commercial type 65-inch where we can run loop of zip lining and things like that right where you come in. So they've already put the television feed in there, but we'd like to enhance the visitor center
So,
and our office space.
With or without sound?
No, the television will just be it won't have I don't think we're gonna have a sound bar on it. It could.
Sound can be turned on, or it can be left off.
It might get real obnoxious to the staff.
And that's why I'm
I'm
asking. I just wondered what your vision was for it.
Yeah. Right now, we don't have plans to put, like, so the Christmas party rocks.
Because here's how I'm picturing it in my mind, and this is just, that's why I asked you. I go to Maverick. I'm a Maverick guy,
Me
right?
too.
And right behind everything now, they have those things that show the adventure and the canoeing and stuff like that. That's how I'm imagining it. They don't do it with sound.
Yep,
Right.
like that. And then
Ours will be able to turn the volume up if we want to, and
Sure.
it's a small enough space that the monitor, the television will work.
So
You
in
know,
other
I mean,
words, you're going to show Sundance skiing. You're going to show Thanksgiving Point
footage
stuff.
of Evermore,
Right, okay.
of Thanksgiving Point, just the videos that we
Yeah.
do. We can run them, and
Yeah. Another thing that we can do is we can connect into Instagram with a web module that
Sure.
we have. And then when a group is in the building, we can actually pull their group's
Feed.
Right. Like BYU
onto
does
the
at their
screen.
football games. Yeah.
We could do that. as
so
well.
that it could be user generated. That's sliding by there. I mean, again, a number of things, but again, just trying to jazz up the visitor center from lighting to getting it painted, and then the last on there. And this was a bid we got 2 or 3 years ago, but it's to redo our desk. The desk is not real user friendly. People sit there and people walk in and you don't even know somebody's below it. We've had some, I don't know where that graffiti came on it, but somebody had scratched some.
Yeah, it has some graffiti, and we had Public Works come and take a look at it, and it's hard to read.
We put a poster on it. It's not a problem. It's scratched into the. It'd be like somebody scratching something in here, and you'd say, "How the heck did that happen? We're here."
Isn't that desk currently mounted, like tied into the wall, though?
No, it's a
Okay.
freestanding. It kind of sits out, kind of funky
It's an L shape,
out.
weird looking.
It's a weird shape, and it
Okay.
sits out funky because where they drilled the holes in the ground for the feeds are way out.
Huh.
So the 10,000 is to cover that. We'll get actual bids, and if it's less than that, we wouldn't ask for all the money. If it's a little bit more, we'll figure out how to take it out of something to figure it out. But the maximum we're asking on that is $26,000 on that second part, and then 30,000. So there's an additional $56,000 ask over above the 2%.
I've got some questions.
Okay.
And I agree. I've often walked by there and wondered if anybody was in there because it's so dark.
It's dark. Yep.
I've said that from the very beginning to you.
Yep.
And so I see some of that. But why? What
Why
are you,
the
why are you
TVs?
doing this? I mean, what is it gonna do? What
Well,
does it generate? What's it?
As we have
You're looking for
more,
more revenue out of it in the gift shop? Is it that people will know you there? What does it do?
the focus is not necessarily more revenue in the gift shop. It's to get more people in and direct them to where they should go. You know, I mean, when we have visitors in town, they come in. We spend a lot of time helping them figure out itineraries for their 2 days here
They
and so
don't-
forth.
And that's not happening now, so they're getting lost
Oh, we
somewhere?
do, but how many people are not coming in? How many people is it, you know, especially even when there's events in the building? Because when there's events in the building, usually we have pretty good traffic that comes into the visitor center.
Yeah.
But it's so dark that sometimes people don't even know we're there.
Because
So
I
it's
would-
just 7 years into the building.
It
It's
was-
time to spend a little.
I would even like to see you address potentially like those window clings of your new Explore Utah Valley
Yes, we talked about
inside
that.
the convention center too, right? Where you're talking where people still see.
Because I go back to your revenue on the gift shop, and it's $4,800. So $4,800.
It's not a big
If
money
we're spending
generator, that's for darn sure.
You know, if it's a revenue thing, if we're trying to increase that revenue,
I would say that's secondary or third area, if that's a word.
So you,
Second or third priority.
I would say
Could-
Joel's thought process on this is it's revenue generating from the fact that he believes that by it creating exposure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I hear it. Creating exposure allows more people to come in so that he can lead them to these generators of the tax and the TRCC and stuff like that. I believe that's
That's
from
exactly
those
right.
that are in the building. that
Well, in
wouldn't
the
know
building as well
otherwise.
as the people that are visiting. I mean, you know, a challenge when we moved from the Health and Justice Building is it's just not as easy for people to just
So we
pull
tried
up-
to move you back there.
I know you did. To pull up in their RV or whatever. It's on Center Street. It's just different. It's different. And yet there's a lot of people that walk up and down Center Street, and we want to try to pull people in. We're trying to figure out how to put some of our travel posters outside the building. Again, to try to create a little more buzz about our space.
Right.
But on the Taylor building, we've got permission
So
for
you're
Bill
tr-
Bank.
So you're trying then for individuals that come here for a conference during their free time to be able to go someplace.
Or
to-
they're a tourism person that's just walking around downtown Provo. So it's both. It's
How
both.
many of those do you get?
A lot. Not as many as we could, but, I mean,
About 7,000 a year.
Just come walking in off the street.
and again, we've got visitor information on the building. People know it's there. We're
And
trying.
half of them spend $1 in the gift shop. No.
Well, and that's probably the right amount for 2 postcards.
Yeah, I know.
They're buying 2 postcards. You know, I mean, we don't have a big product. I mean, the posters have been really popular. In fact,
That may go up.
we're trying to work with Alexander's to see if they can print as people want, that we could link them there and they could order the size poster they want. And that could increase some revenue for us
Which actually
on
we
that.
do a lot of that online as well.
So that we don't have to do fulfillment, but they could look at the 12 posters. We're looking to do a few more posters next year. Or they could order them. That would come back as gift shop revenue. You know, the gift shop, and I don't know if it's just that you can go to the little flag store and get your flags, and you know, it's a funny little thing. We've got space to do something with.
Yeah.
We don't want to completely. I mean, if Charlene and me had our ways, she's argued at times, let's just get rid of the retail.
The gift shop had its heyday during the Olympic time period.
Right.
And we did, the revenue was over 20,000 during that time period. And we also received a lot of revenue from county employees.
When we were there, we'd run the 30% off for Christmas, and they'd come and buy stuff and that. We're not seeing the same thing.
Yeah, the other thing that we have seen that has happened is more products have been pushed out to grocery stores that we used to sell exclusively at the gift shop. So
Roller mill stuff,
yeah,
the
we
Rally
had Roller
Farms.
Mill. We used to be one of the only distributors locally for their product, and even some candle companies and some other companies. And so we would actually get a lot of locals that would come in because we were the only ones that would distribute that
Well-
product. But now it's all over.
Well, based on one of your board members, why don't you put some new skin product and sign up for your downline here? No.
Well, one thing we are trying to do is make sure that doTERRA and New Skin products are not the only thing in our representatives in Washington, D.C.'s offices. We've offered to do some of our posters that'll be put on the wall. In fact, John Curtis said, yeah, let's get it done.
You know what you
So
should
we're
sell?
gonna try to do some there again, so when his
You know
constituents
what you
visit
should sell
them.
there, by the way, that you guys did for marketing that I still loved, and I wish I would have got one, was the 3D Viewmasters of the pictures in Utah County.
They have those for on the sales side, but they're not really.
We should try it at the gift shop.
Because when you're showing pictures of, I mean, plus they're nostalgic. They're, you know, they have the beautiful pictures of Utah County in them.
Hey, Charlene, look into it, because again,
So
we've
why-
ordered them
I
on
would
the
like to buy one for real.
we've ordered them on the sales side and used them for like
I know you do.
tchotchkes
I
and
know
stuff
you
like
do.
that, but we haven't.
We
Good
actually
take.
caught wind that one of the local boutiques, they were looking for real estate and a place to put their product. And I met with them, and they seemed excited to maybe do an on consignment or borrow our space and class it up and bring more.
Oh, we'd have rented
Bring
it to
more
them.
to us.
Right.
Yeah,
Kind of like
exactly.
Quilted Bear, where you
Yeah.
rent a space and you sell your own stuff.
I haven't followed up. I haven't heard back from them. So we've been trying to look at, like, for instance, Willie Holdman will let us take some of his photography and sell it on consignment. We haven't done that for a while because we've lost a bit of our foot traffic. But if we were able to pick up some very unique and off-the-shelf items, we might can get some foot traffic in there just because of the gift shop as well.
But back to Commissioner Lee's question of the retail has not really been our focus. We do it, we have some of it, it makes a little bit of money. Yeah, we think if we can get more foot traffic, we'll do better. You know, I don't know that we'll be back to the heydays of the pre-Olympics, unless we get another Olympics, you know, something like that. But but again, I think there's a void if we don't have it, because people want that stuff. They want to come in for the shot glasses, they want to come in for the T-shirt, they want to come in for the postcards, they want to come in for that kind of stuff.
My question is this then, why can't the $26,000 be rolled into the overall marketing project instead of being an addition? If it's really something that we're doing for marketing, we're already given $500,000, why could that 26 be a part of it?
Infrastructure more than marketing.
7 years into the
Infrastructure.
space, it's an upgrade to the space, is what we were.
So going along with Commissioner Lee, the light fixtures, right? Absolutely, that's different.
Yeah, that needs to definitely take
But
place.
the other thing, and a
counter,
desk, and
the
a desk,
desk.
right? So those are kind of separated things, because in my mind. But the other things, yeah, why couldn't they?
Again, we'll take our direction. Again, we'd like to, if it could be a one-time expense, keep more money for traditional marketing, our digital buys, all that. But if you feel it would be a better use to take the 10,000 and the you know, the hardware, the monitor, you know, the $5,000, I think it's the $5,000, $6,000. Again, that's a hardware equipment. If we were replacing
Right, but it's a marketing tool. And that's what Commissioner Lee's saying. If you get $500,000 and instead you're only going to use $490,000 with EKR because you're going to do this as a marketing piece to help also facilitate what the $500,000 for, why couldn't that be a component of it? That's what I hear the question.
That's what I'm, yeah.
Well,
that's what I'm asking.
and it's reasonable. It's a reasonable question. You know, if the idea is instead of it being $26,000, here's $20,000, Joel, $6,000, figure out how to get that out of your budget. We can figure it out. I mean, again, as our budget is growing, we should be able to do some of those things. We try to keep very focused on what our mission is, and that's the group sales side, the promotion for this tourism side, now figuring out how to measure it and try to get those results ASAP.
Yeah,
Because, you know,
because the 2%'s not stagnant. I mean, it's going up.
It is going
right?
up.
It's going
It is
up.
going
So
up.
it's more than what we had last year.
Oh yeah, last year it was 1.438 and we're 1.608. That's
Yeah.
$180,000.
Right.
Thus, where last year you helped us pay for a position that we didn't have money for, we've absorbed that position in that growth this year. There's, you know, we're going to maintain that convention services position. So again, thank you. You know, I mean, we appreciate that it's going up. We don't take it for granted. We know that everything's forecasting not a huge downturn, but a softening. And we're trying to be sensitive to that. I mean, in your wisdom or previous commission's wisdom to do the averaging, it kind of takes out the, you know, I mean, I look at Park City and I look at Salt Lake and they have to go in, I don't know if it's quarterly or every 6 months and true up their budget. I mean, they're bigger budgets. They're 12 million and 18 million, 12 and 18 million, but they have to true it up because they are on what the county collects now. Whereas Utah County has set it up where they take the 3 years and kind of average it. And I get that creates some challenges with you making sure you've got reserves and other things to cover a leaner period. But it's a request. And if the feeling is that we need to kind of come down the middle on that and let us figure out some of the more traditional marketing things like you're saying. And again, it is intended to try to inspire, drive people to do more, get people in that they'll sit there on the chairs and watch this monitor with all this cool stuff. And
But I don't hear him saying no.
well, and that's
I
it.
just hear him saying, can it be a component of this?
It could, and that's all I'm saying is it's a very good question and
Can it be a component of that? The 2% with the increase, I mean, goes towards rent and some of the stuff.
helps us with the others. Yep.
So I'm just trying to find a way to justify that as I'm looking.
Fair
at it.
enough. Fair enough. But and it's a great question. That's what your charge is as commissioners to make sure you use those.
2 years based on its growth, are you absorbing that 500,000? I'm just kidding. You haven't even got a plan.
Let's
I'm
just get it this year, and then
I'm
we
just
can talk
teasing.
about the next couple of years. I mean, I get that, but again, we're excited. There's so much more to Utah County now that we can promote in a more traditional tourism manner. I mean, that was always kind of the challenge that we don't have a national park, all these different things, but we've got some really cool tourism product now that I think marketed and promoted well will get people down here, and will get people to spend an afternoon, 2 days.
Do you have Explore Utah Valley T-shirts, golf shirts type of things in it?
We are slowly starting to order some.
I was going to say might be something else to add in there. And I would like to know how much I could buy a Viewmaster for. They are really the
We'll
coolest
work on
things.
the Viewmaster.
I'll look at the
As we get
cost.
some cool photography, we could update the discs too, because they're
Right.
cheap, I'm sure, to
Right.
produce, so.
They really are cute.
But no, we will plan on each of you getting a Visit Utah Valley shirt. And again, I'm not doing that to have any reason except for I want you to be a walking billboard for me.
Whoa. That was old. You're going to go back and watch this
Am I
on
gonna
film
get in
and
trouble
realize
here?
what you just said.
What?
I don't want to Visit Utah Valley shirt.
Oh, hello. Sorry, people. There's a petition to get rid of Joel
We're
for his foul
branding. We're
language.
branding with the good one that you have. Explore
But no,
Utah.
we would love to. In fact, Commissioner Ivey was unable to attend our meeting, but we did shirts, and unless there's a reason, I mean, we had one board member that, I won't say who she is, but she's with UTA and she refused it, because again, they're really scrutinizing it. And if there's not a comfort level to have something with our mark on it, we fully understand. If not, I want you to be a walking billboard for us.
If it's under $50, we're okay.
Yeah, and they definitely are.
Coles isn't, but ours are.
Definitely are. Even the OGOs were only 34 or
I know.
36, so that's about as high
Again,
end as
I-
we've ever gone.
Again,
on
I do
shirts.
appreciate what you've done. I like the direction it's going. It feels
Well, thank
really
you,
good.
thank
So,
you. Well, and again, a great board. I mean, the
Right.
cool thing about my board is that every board member has some type of skin in the game because this is their world, and it only does them well if we do well to help promote and do it. You don't have individuals that. It's not a hugely demanding board, but there's restaurateurs and attractions and all these people that it's critical to their business that we do well.
Yeah.
And so they support us, they're engaged, they do it, and that's what works well for
And they're
us.
passionate about it.
Very passionate about it. So
Anyway, thank
hey,
you.
any other questions? Anything?
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and we will plan on if there's any other feedback you want. If we need to sit down and go through anything more granularly into the detail, we're more than happy to do it with you.
Just keep gathering bids. I prefer not. If you don't have to deal in generalities and there are actual numbers, it's easier for me.
Well, and one reason we don't get into the really fine
I know why we're
detail,
not
which we will
yet.
sit down and share with you, any of you, is that, again, public record. The fine detail shows every show we're going to, every lead source generation thing we're paying for.
I just mean
all
for
of that,
desks and
we
stuff like
prefer
that.
not to have, and as a 501c6, we prefer to keep that on the private side.
Sure.
Because it just allows us to not reveal something that could be just gathered through a Graham request or something like that. But none of it is meant to be confidential for any of you. We're more than willing to share that information with
yeah.
you.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you. Lunchtime, I think. Do you guys get to go to lunch?
Yep,
or
we're
do you
done
have
till
another
2.
one? Okay, thanks, gentlemen. And support staff. You guys are great.